Hey guys, welcome to the WoodsEdge podcast. We're in the middle of our season called The Consecrated Life, and we are looking at what are the aspects when God consecrates us for a big vision. What is He asking of us? What does that look like practically? And this week, we're going to talk about abundant generosity. And with us, we've got our executive pastor, Kevin Henson, and our missions pastor, John Carswell. Guys, I'm excited to have both of you here to talk a little bit about generosity.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Dave. It's good to be here.
So let's just talk first about what is a biblical view of abundant generosity. Kevin, when we say that, what are we referring to?
Yeah, I think when I think about abundant generosity, most people automatically go to money. They think money is generosity is related around money, and that's a big part of it. You know, there's the element, the aspects of us being abundantly generous with what God has given us. You know, it's the idea of recognizing that all that we have comes from God anyway. It's not ours to begin with. And so being generous with the finances God has given us is part of that. But it's also more than that. You know, I'm sure we'll talk more about that throughout this podcast, is that generosity is not just about our finances, although it's a part of it. It's about our time. It's about other things that God has given us, you know, the other resources that we have, our talents, the way God has blessed us and gifted us with different things, that He calls us to be abundantly generous in all aspects of our lives. And so, yes, while we're talking through our giving initiative or Prepare, and there's funding aspects that we're going to be discussing and needing, that's a big part of it. But we want everybody, you know, to give more than just that. You know, their time, their serving at the church. You know, John leading our missions area. Just so many people are giving in missions of their time, going on trips and things like that. So there's so much about us as a believer that abundant generosity is our whole life.
Yeah.
And so we don't want it to be just about money, although that's important. It's a big part of it. But it's more than that as well.
Yeah. Whenever we talk about generosity, you know, immediately there are going to be some people that maybe get a little defensive, or maybe they've been manipulated in the past, or maybe they've seen, you know, churches abuse that position of spiritual authority. And John, what do you see as obstacles to generosity in people's lives?
Yeah, you've alluded to a couple of them. I mean, if someone feels like a church has mishandled or manipulated or lied to them, it's going to take a little bit of effort for them to get over that.
Yeah.
So maybe they do get to a healthy church, but they still got that feeling. We could certainly, an issue of trust with leadership. I think there's probably even a bigger issue of recognizing one of the things that Kevin said, that everything I have, like everything, if you go back, even the Old Testament, it may not have been so much gold and silver. It may have been land, or it may have been livestock or whatever. And well, all of that, God's given me all of that. And so if He's given it to me, what does He want me to do with what is His? Right. And in a society where we are so money-driven and capitalistic, it's, hey, I worked hard for this money, it is mine. And that's just in our society, that creeps in. I think that's just kind of an underlying thing for all of us to get over.
Well, dig a little deeper, John, on that, because, I mean, I know you are a really hard worker, and you, over the course of your career, you've served in church, but you've also, you know, you've been in sales, you've been working hard for what you've earned. What has your journey looked like with generosity?
Raised in a Christian home, and so we're taught those key principles, and my parents demonstrated that. But honestly, when I got out of school, I was not really focused on God. I had an issue of fear of not being successful. I was working super hard, and as a result, was making a good living and rising the corporate ladder. Was not focused on God. Was maybe, I think I probably tipped God during that time a little bit, but had that kind of attitude. I've worked hard for all this, so all this is mine. And I was miserable. I was making more money I thought I ever had, was rising quick, and I was miserable. But my parents had set me on gave me the right foundation. So I began seeking God. And guess what? He asked me to forsake it all and move and pursue ministry. So my household went to a 65% household pay cut. I mean, in a minute.
That's a big deal.
We were like literally having to figure out how to do it. And it turned to an enormous amount of trust. And so for the next, I would say 9 years, it was a tremendous financial walk of faith, and God never let us down. I'm saying it was easy, but he never let us down. And so it's just reinforces, hey, this idea that I'm in control of things is just not true. He's in control.
Yeah.
Let me try to seek what he wants me to do. So that's been our journey.
Yeah. What have been the benefits or the fruit of that in your life?
I trust him at every turn.
Yeah.
Number one, finances are not that big of a deal. I'm not trying to build this dream life with my finances. The best life is an abundant life through Christ and his will. So it's just become, when something difficult comes up, my wife and I just didn't he provide for us in the past? Right. Is this what he's calling to? And is he who he says he is? Yes and yes, let's move forward. And my mentor promised me that a life like that was going to be an adventure, and it has been a thrill. I'm not saying it's been easy, but I get to see God at work in amazing ways. Yeah.
Well, seeing God at work, I'm thinking also about both of you have some experience with Compassion International, and I would imagine, Kevin, that a lot of what you did is asking people, trying to get people involved in giving. So what did you see among people who exhibited that generosity? Were there any common traits that you saw among people that you felt like were really abundantly generous?
Yeah, we were fortunate to see a lot of people give very generously, either individually or as a group. We work with a lot of churches that work with donors, of course. And I think an aspect, and you sort of picked up on a little bit, John, just this aspect of trust. Fortunately, Compassion International has a great name. And so there's a lot of trust inherent in Compassion. But that is a big issue for people, is can they trust what's going to be? The churches, organizations, get splattered across the newspaper for mishandling money all the time.
Yeah.
And so there's this aspect of, can I trust my hard-earned dollars? Again, it's a little bit of that my hard-earned dollars kind of comes into play that we have to realize it's not. But can I trust this organization to do well with the money that I'm giving? And so I think that when we saw donors giving to Compassion, that was the first aspect that we had to do, is build trust. And I believe we have to do that at WoodsEdge, is how are we building trust with the money that we receive that's going to be used for kingdom purposes? And so that's a big part of it. I find that as I'm visiting with people right now just about the Prepare Initiative, they're asking questions about, can we be trusted as an organization? That's what they're asking with the funds that we're given. And so when I see generous people giving, that's an element of it, is that they trust that the money will be used for kingdom purposes and leverage them for the most, right? To really, how are we making a big difference and a big impact? And I think working with Compassion and even WoodsEdge, just when I talk to some of our givers that have been giving faithfully for so long, yes, the tithe, but even above and beyond the tithe, it is a trust factor. It's trusting that. But then, John, you talked about this idea of this just, when you become that kind of giver, there's some element of, you just believe that God's going to take care of you. Even if you're making these huge sacrifices, which we've seen people do, they believe that even though I'm making sacrifices and this is a big deal that I'm giving to, or this is a lot of money that I'm giving, the Lord will have me, and similar to John's story, my history in giving is seeing that the Lord has always stepped in and taken care of us. Even when I stepped out of corporate America as well to take a ministry job, knowing there's a big pay cut, the Lord has always provided, it's not the $1 million salaries that some people make, of course, but it's enough, and it's really on determining what is enough. And so some of these high capacity givers that we visit with, what they have done is they've looked at their life and said, what is enough? What is enough for me to live on? And then I'll give way past that. So especially for younger givers I've talked to that have been very successful, and they say, look, this is enough for us to live on. Anything above and beyond that, we're going to give the Lord. So we've seen, situations where people that are young or even that are middle-aged giving a lot of money because they have decided that they as a family can live on enough. Anything above that's going to go to kingdom purposes. And they invest, though. They see it as an investment in the kingdom, not as an obligation, although the Bible calls us to do that. And sometimes, especially in my early giving, I felt like I'm just doing this out of obedience. It's just an obligation. It's obedience.
Right.
I don't know what the results are going to be of this, but I just know I need to be obedient. And then we see the blessings come.
Yeah.
And so when I talk to some of these higher capacity givers, it's about obedience. Yes, it's about those things, but they also know that they're leveraging an investment in the kingdom for the future.
Yeah.
Kevin and I both have a good friend. He's the former president of Compassion. His name's Wes Stafford. And he really developed an idea. I think he was working on a book about it, but it's the idea of what's the opposite of poor. Most of us think it's rich. Right. It's not. The opposite of poor is enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we have enough, if we temper that, think of the capacity we can have to be generous in so many areas of our life.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It gets to the idea of contentment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
exactly right.
when we are grasping, when we are holding on, I remember a pastor friend used to talk about, do I own my stuff or does my stuff own me?
Right.
You know, when we're grasping for more, that contentment is elusive. But when we find enough,
Right.
we really get what we're looking for, which is a sense of contentment.
That's right. This is enough.
And then I found in that, sure, we've all bought stuff that was probably a little pricey that we wanted, that we enjoyed. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I can never think of a time that I kind of made this like quite a bit of money to a person or to a cause. It was a need, right? And I wasn't going to get a tax write-off or whatever. And it's kind of like, what? You thought about like, what? That's a big number. Never have I received so much joy as giving money that I hadn't set aside to give to someone or to help someone out. And I gave that money knowing I was going to have to sacrifice something. Just the amount of joy that my wife and I have, because that's a value. I mean, it's just amazing. It doesn't make sense. Like, oh, we could have went on vacation. But we helped this person out because God said so. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I think is the biggest blessing in giving. You know, I mean, we don't give to get. You know, this is not some sort of transaction, right? We give because the Lord calls us to give. And so again, like I said, sometimes that first step is just an act of obedience. I'm just obeying what the Lord has called me to do.
Yeah.
But then it becomes this pattern of joy that you start seeing the impact of what your giving can do. You know, and we don't want credit for that, of course, but we're starting to silently see the impact of what this gift can do, you know, in someone's life or in a ministry or in a church or an organization like Compassion, whatever it is. And that really is what I think is enduring and encourages more people to continue to give in other ways, is that, man, this is an incredible joy I have in the giving. And so that's, I know for my life, that's been, you know, like John mentioned, that's been something that's been big for me. It's just the idea of that if I'm giving and I'm sacrificing in ways, I know that's making a difference in someone's lives. I heard a saying years ago, I loved it. It was, live simply so that others may simply live. You know, and so the idea of how do we pull back a little bit? How do we not do some of those things maybe we want to do and live a little simpler, knowing that by our giving and our generosity, some may just be simply living because of that, whether it's a child with compassion or whether it's the many, many ministries and missions that we do here at WoodsEdge that are being impacted, or the ministries, the students and children in our ministries that are being impacted by people's daily gifts. We are knowing that if we could just live a little simply or enough, others will simply live because of that. So.
Yeah. Well, and what I like about that too is that the amount of joy we receive is not proportionate to the size of the gift. That is, it doesn't have to be a huge gift to bring joy to our hearts. Everyone can experience that. Yeah. So, Kevin, talk a little bit about, we have a wide range of people at WoodsEdge. We do have people that are high capacity, and then you got people that are trying to get out of debt. You got people that have maybe never given or only occasionally give, like John was talking about tipping God, you know. So talk a little bit about kind of across the spectrum, what we would want for people as they think about abundant generosity in their own situations.
Yeah, it's good. You know, one of the things you've heard us talk about, when we talk about more, is in this Prepare initiative, we want 100% participation. Now, that means we want everyone to be involved at some level, to take a step toward generosity, right? For some, that may be simply getting out of debt, you know, and so we're going to have some classes for folks around that. That may be a first step for some. Some, it may just be to give for the first time. Others may be saying, hey, I've been giving, I've been tipping God, but, you know, I need to get that to a tithe. You know, I need to give 10% of my income, to God. And so that may be the first. Others, it may be, hey, I've been tithing, I'm going to take the next step and, you know, give even above and beyond that tithe. But I think for everyone, no matter where they are, there's a step for them to take in generosity. And you're exactly right. It's not the dollar amount of the gift. It's It's the heart. It's what God has called us to do, and it's taking that step. And for some, it may be little because they receive little, and the Lord blesses. That's the classic widow's mite.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's a great example of Jesus saying, she has given more than anybody else, and it was 2 coins, right? I mean, that was a big deal for her to do that. For others, that wouldn't be much of a gift at all. That wouldn't be generous. For them, it's something different. The Lord has blessed people differently in different ways. And so we really believe that 100% participation means everyone is taking a step toward being generous. And we want to help them take whatever that next step is.
Yeah. John, what about the person that's like, hey, I'm already generous. I give 10%. Why would God ask me to do more?
Yeah.
I mean, speak to that.
Yeah. There's an idea as a missions team that we live with in really proximity where people are doing with their lives, and we're always striving. We don't say this a whole lot, but we're always striving to push people in a little bit of step of uncomfortableness, because we see that's where they get to live on faith, and we see that's where they're dependent, they're a little vulnerable, and we see God really move them, and so we try to make them a little uncomfortable. Maybe they're going to go down to a homeless ministry or a prison ministry. It's a little uncomfortable, a little awkward, but pretty soon they're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm never going to do it again. I've never had people do that. They're always like, oh, I want more, because it's kind of exhilarating. And so I would say we don't want people to make bad financial decisions,
sure, of course.
But we want people to step out on faith, right? To recognize that this is all God's. And so if it's His, He's going to take care of things. Let me step out in faith here and see what He does. And I've got a story that's kind of in line with this. I was discipling a gentleman, was asked to, and I met with him every Saturday, and he was quite wealthy. He was a millionaire. He had plenty of money. And church was very pleased with him. He was tithing on that. So that's great money. Yeah. And so when I met with them, I asked him a couple of questions. Where did you see God work Monday through Friday? Right? So are you just working, or are you watching for God? And the other question I would ask him, I say, right now I'm going to ask you where you've been generous, and pretty soon I'm going to change it to where you have been abundantly generous, right? And he kept on coming week after week, and he's like, never had a story of him being generous. And so he finally said, John, I keep thinking that on Friday, I'm going to meet with you on Saturday, and I keep trying to review where I've been generous, and I realize that I haven't. I feel like I'm a generous person because I give a tithe, but I don't have a story. Yeah. Maybe I'm not generous, because quite frankly, for 10% for him was easy. Yeah. Right? Stepping out beyond that was something that he needed to do. And so I would just say wherever we're at, it's a step of, it's an idea of recognizing who we belong to, and then living that out. And for some people, it may not be 10%. Yeah. It may be 50%. That's right. Exactly right? Yeah. But for some people, it may be, hey, I need to get out of debt where I can move towards this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that element of faith is such a key ingredient, right? I mean, here in the U.S., we have so many safety nets. We've got our 401ks, and we've got our savings accounts, and we've got a lot of times family that can take care of us. And so we don't risk much. When you think of other countries that don't have those safety nets, and you see the faith that those in the developing world have. I mean, it's just we're marveled by it. I mean, John's been on the field all over the world, and he sees people that don't have anything, but they have this great measure of faith. And that's what I think you're getting at, is that sometimes in our giving, we're not pressed in a place where we have to rely on faith. Like, I'm not sure how I'm going to make it unless the Lord steps in, because it's very comfortable. We're very comfortable. We have our ducks in a row. We've got our savings accounts, all those kind of things. And I think that's unfortunate for us. And I think in areas of giving, we can, it's almost like put the Lord to the test. Yeah. It's like, let's do this. Let's take a risk and be abundantly generous. And this, I don't know how it's going to end up, but then we develop a measure of faith that we didn't even know we had before, because of the way the Lord takes care of us through that.
Yeah. Yeah. It occurs to me, my parents set an example of tithing, and then they went above and beyond. And that's always been something that Jess and I have done. But for me, I mean, that's just an automatic bank transaction. Right. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't even take any effort on my part. And so it's easy to just forget that, and for that generosity muscle to just atrophy. I mean, it's kind of like exercise. You have to keep working it out. Keep, giving stress to that muscle to build it. In the same way with generosity, you got to keep moving forward and keep working that generosity muscle out.
That's well said.
Yeah, and I think that you're exactly right. I mean, in the day of automatic debits and all of automatic transfers, like we hardly see that happen, right? And so I think that's why I think abundant generosity, it can go beyond obviously financial, right? So the more we're making conscious decisions, we know that may be happening. So there are other places we're giving, are there other areas that we're giving in? Great. What are the other areas that you're as an individual are making constant choices to give of yourself? Right? Yeah. To take a meal down to someone down the street that's new or that's hurting, or, serve in a mission locally or nationally, or serve in our student or children's ministry. Like those are conscious decisions that you can make to be generous of your time and the way that God has blessed us. If people have different gifts, teaching gifts, administrative gifts, whatever, they can use those gifts in volunteer capacities, whether it's at WoodsEdge or whether it's the many ministries that we're partnered with. And that is an act of generosity. Sometimes it's a little bit more right in front of us because it's not just happening behind the scenes, right? Like we're making a conscious effort to give up hours to go do XYZ ministry or volunteer. And so that's why generosity is financial. It's a big part of it because in so many ways that's how money is one of those things that sort of holds us, right? But in other ways that we give, time, energies, the talents God's given us, that just reinvigorates who we are as being generous people.
It's interesting because on money and time, the American sees both of those things as extremely limited, extremely finite.
Yeah, that's right.
The rest of the world, or a lot of the developing world, sees time as unending, infinite, right? And so those are two big ones for the American.
That's right.
That your generosity is revealed.
You're going to hold those, right? Because they're limited. I need to hold on to these things.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit, because one of the things we've said with this Prepare initiative is that we could raise some money and we could build some buildings, but we haven't yet done the work. That's the preparation for the work. That's why this is called Prepare. Because if we're going to see Houston become a city of God, it's going to take generosity beyond just pooling some money and raising a building. So, John, what kind of generosity are we going to be called to if we're going to fulfill this vision to see Houston become a city of God?
Well, first, I was talking to Jeff today and kind of telling him how the missions team is really leaning into this idea of infusing prayer in everything we do. So that's another one of time. I'm too busy. I don't have time to pray. And we're all running with that issue, but to spend time in intentional prayer, number one. And then for the missions team, we've worked on the last year and a half of really mobilizing. And so that does go back into, that may cost you a little bit of money, but it's really going to cost you your time. It's going to, we want to dig into your spiritual gifting and your talents, but really your time, a Saturday, a Wednesday night where it's inconvenient. And really we're trying to mobilize people into all these ministry partners we have that are in the real edgy, dark spots of our city. They're working with, just so many different things. We talk about women and children at risk and freedom ministries, which is addiction, which is prison ministries and all these things. And so I think over the last year and a half, we've had a real increase in that, and we are going to be asking more. Our goal is to mobilize every man, woman, and child at the highest and most uncomfortable level we can. And I think, just imagine, we want to raise a big financial piece for this Prepare initiative, but imagine if everyone in our church is mobilized in a way that they're generous with their time and generous with their finances. That's way much more. WoodsEdge is an awesome place, and what I just said is way beyond what we're doing right now. It really could be changing, a huge change for Houston.
And that's why I think that's so important as we're moving in this Prepare initiative, that that we're talking about things about the heart, the consecrated heart, right? It's about prayer, and it's about worship, it's about generosity, and it's about repentance, and it's about love. It's who we are as people, and it's preparing us as follower of Jesus in the right way so that we can then go out and make a significant impact, here in the greater Houston area. Houston become a city of God, but then also in our nation and also all across the world. Yeah. And so it starts with who we are as followers of Jesus, right? Yeah. That's where it's got to start. It's got to start with the heart first. And then from there, we are preparing that ground to then go out and make a significant impact for the kingdom here and around the world.
Yeah. Well, I think it gets back to what you were saying about money. We look at our money as this is mine, but it's not just our money that we look at like that. Right. We look at our talents like, well, this is my talent. This is my gift. We look at our lives like, this is my life. Yeah. But that's really not a biblical view. Right. I mean, Paul is telling the Ephesians, hey, you're God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for you to do. He's telling the Corinthians, what do you have that you did not receive? James is saying, every good and perfect gift comes from the Father. And so literally everything we have, the breath that we breathe, has been given to us by God, and it's been given to us on purpose so that we would do good works. And then Jesus says, so that people see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So our generosity results in worship.
Glorification of God.
Yeah, so Deuteronomy has this idea, you're going into the land and you have a responsibility, your behavior is going to have a response from the people that are there. Yeah. Matthew has the same thing, a light on a hill, and the people are going to have a response. Peter's the same thing. The whole point is a lot of times we think when we come to Christ, oh, that's it. That's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. Right. You have been saved for a purpose and have a responsibility to the rest of the world.
Right.
Yeah. So Kevin, if I'm going to take a step forward in abundant generosity during this time, what's going to have to change in my heart?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for folks that are sitting out there that maybe haven't taken that kind of step before, I think there is an element of understanding what we're asking. Again, we're not just asking for money. That's a part of this, but that's not what it's about. We're asking for discipleship for their heart, the consecrated heart.
We don't want much, just all their heart forever.
Exactly. That's all we're asking. How much at all? That's the most important thing, is that their heart. Yeah. Like, we're asking for them to take a step, and that there's a sacrifice just in that alone. It's a sacrifice. We're asking you to spend time with the Lord. If you're not already doing that, we're asking you to be in a community. Yes, church on Sundays. But also in a community, to do life together. We're asking you to do these things, to bend your life, to bend your heart more toward Jesus. Our generosity, the financial, will come out of that. The more we're aligned to who God is in his purposes, then that informs us and moves our heart to giving. Because in a lot of ways, that's the last thing that people hold on to. They'll volunteer, they'll serve a lot of times, but sometimes that's the last thing, because that's the most thing that they think is theirs. They earned this, they got a degree or whatever it is they did to get a job, and this is mine. It's the last thing they give. I'll give this or I'll give that, but I'm not going to do this. So by us really starting with the heart and who they are as followers of Jesus, then that opens up their heart to say, there's more to it. And my pocketbook, if you will follow that. Right. So I think that's some of the challenges that people will face through this. Is hopefully that they recognize that what we're asking them to give to is a worthy cause. The children's ministry, expansion of a children's ministry, the prayer chapel, other things that the needs that we have on our campus, sure, but there's also just a great aspect of just our ministry budget in general and the amazing things that funding that ministry budget does here amongst our own people, but also amongst the city and amongst the world. And then even the extra funding we're asking for missions, for church planting and all those things, for people to recognize and see, like, these are big things that are way beyond me and my family. These are things that will change the world, and I can have a part of that by giving. Yeah, I think that's critical.
Yeah. John, you alluded a little bit to the potential, like what could happen if we mobilized everybody, if everyone took a step forward in giving. What do you see as the potential of abundant generosity if we could live this out as a church?
I know a story of a family. They were on a Christmas vacation, and they were at like a IHOP or whatever, and it was a skeleton crew, and the waiter couldn't keep up because the cook, and so the meal was like $50, but they saw it as an opportunity, and they tipped him $100. And in order to get his attention and have a spiritual, so that didn't go through the church. That was just being generous as a Christ follower. So just multiply that out by 5,000 people every single day in the city of Houston and beyond. I mean, imagine what that could look like.
Yeah. And I like the direction John's going there. You know, you can easily answer the question that with the money that we're being raised in this campaign, like the impact of those dollars, right? I mean, and we could talk about that. You know, the impact that relates to missions, the impact that relates to the ministries, all those kind of things. There will be great impact because of that. But the bigger impact is our hearts, you know, is people that are falling more in love with Jesus, and they're living out these 5 principles that we're talking about, abundant generosity today, but living those principles out, the impact in families, in your own personal families, in your community, in the greater Houston area, you know, around the world, the impact of people, you know, just ordinary, regular day people falling more in love with Jesus and living out a passionate life pursuing Jesus, whether the dollars were there or not, that is significant. And that'll make a difference in our church, in our city, in our communities, in the world. And so that's what excites me about the impact of the Prepare Initiative is, yes, the financial is going to be awesome. I think we're going to see all that come in. I think we're going to be able to do some amazing things with what the Lord has called us to and the way the Lord has blessed us financially in that. But the impact it's going to have on people's hearts and the way they're going to impact families, friends, and generations to come is a much bigger deal.
Thanks for listening to the WoodsEdge podcast. This is episode number 3, so be sure you subscribe to get the rest of this season as we look at the consecrated life. If you want to know more about WoodsEdge, go to woodsedge.org, or you can visit us north of Houston in the Woodland Spring area.